What's up, y'all? We are here talking about Real Housewives of New York. I guess it's called like the new era. I still don't know the season number. I didn't do my homework and look. The new era, and this is episode 2. This episode, the ladies are going to the Hamptons. They're going to be going to Erin's house in Sag Harbor. And basically, Brynn isn't going. I guess there was a lot of like discourse online about Brynn not going. I think she's an early fan fave, which I can understand. I think she's a fun girl. Even to the point where like, I think they advertised next episode like, Brynn's return, Brynn's back, which I was excited about. But it was funny to see them act like she had really went somewhere. Like she just had a little cold, y'all. She wasn't feeling well, and she didn't go. She didn't go the first day. I don't know if y'all are not familiar with like the Hamptons. I'm gonna say it like I know, because I'm like, ooh, I just moved to New York almost a year ago, and I actually went to the Hamptons for my birthday, like 2 months ago. If you don't know though, because I'm an expert. Basically, the Hamptons is like a 2-3 hour drive away from where I am in Brooklyn, where I drove from. It's like a 2.5 hour drive from here. So she didn't go the first day. She can pick up and go the next day from wherever the heck she's at or was. So it's that simple. But yeah, so basically the girls are packing up. We start off with Jessel and Sai and Uba, who all rode together. Erin's at the house, and Jenna shows up kind of shortly thereafter. So they're all riding together from the city. There's this first scene where basically Sai has a ton of bags. I thought that was fun. I've mentioned in my review of Atlanta, kind of like these edits that they do on the shows. I think it adds context and storyline, just where they kind of show the va boom and the fashion and the mood and the like grind domness of the ladies. So I think that was kind of one of those edits where it's like, oh, look at Sai, and like she has all these clothes, and look at everything she packed for a quick trip to the Hamptons. So I thought that was fun. And it showed a lot of her character. I think they're doing a really great job at showing these 6 ladies' characters very early on. I've even remembered all 6 of their names by heart by episode 2, and that's a feat for me because I'm very bad with names. So I think that production's doing a really good job with the storytelling for the ladies so far. To do a lot of back and forth while the ladies are riding there, and then we go back to the house with Erin, and she's preparing for the ladies to get there. And, it can be hard to plan a group trip. And I'm still trying to dissect Erin, which I said in my first episode. I don't think there's anything wrong with her. That's not what I'm trying to say. But she has a different vibe to me than the other ladies. And I think where I'm landing on it for now, at least, is that Erin takes herself very seriously, and I'm not saying that in a negative context. Differentiate that from saying she takes herself too seriously. I'm not saying that. I'm saying she takes herself very seriously, as opposed very seriously in a group of women that take things, not themselves necessarily, but things less seriously, if that makes sense. So I kind of feel like Erin's always kind of like type A, as compared more type A, I guess I would say, than the other ladies. Kind of like she's running things and trying to keep things structured, and everybody's just kind of having a good time. And I can relate to that being stressful, because I'm kind of like that in general. Like that's kind of my personality as well. Like I like structure. I like to know what's going on. I'm very like rigid sometimes, and then other people are kind of just like, and that can be stressful. So that's where I'm landing with Erin for right now. It's going to make more sense as I get into the episode. And I say that also because obviously she's planning a group trip, right? And there's extra pressure on that because this is a new group. This is a new show. This is her house in the Hamptons. You know what I'm saying? So it really hinges on a lot of success at the end of the day, on and off of the show. You want to make sure the ladies have a good time because it's a trip and it's a group and it's a new group performing this group. But also I want to make good television. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sure that's a lot of stress, especially for someone that I'm kind of seeing that Erin may be. But I don't know. We're only on episode 2. Just met her. Nice girl though. Beautiful gowns, beautiful home. So yeah. She's planning. She has this little crew there, and there's a lot of emphasis on the fact that she is, putting out caviar. And I believe that she thought that this was a big deal. She's just like, I'm going to do caviar because it's bougie, and these ladies are bougie, and they have a lot of wants and needs. And basically, we jump back to the car, and Sai and Uba and Jessel are calling her like, hey, like, what food do you have at the house? You know, like, what are we eating? And she's like, oh, I have caviar. And the girls are like, okay. And they're like, well, we're going to go to Provisions, which is a grocery store, right? Like, they're like, we need to eat. So, you know, Erin's already like, okay, they're already not pleased. But she's not taking it like in a negative way, which I liked. Because, again, I can relate to Erin. And it's hard when you're trying to like control things and have everything together and you're still not pleasing people. And so it can be very easy to kind of get in your head and get upset about it, but she didn't. So I appreciated that. And we also see like Sai brought toilet paper because she's like, I need the proper ply toilet paper, you know, to use the bathroom, which is picky. But it's like, that's her preference. Let the girl bring her toilet paper. It could have rubbed Erin the wrong way, but it didn't. So I liked that. So, you know, Erin's doing great this episode for me. So while they're doing all of that, Jenna shows up. And we got a lot about Jenna this episode. We get a lot about the ladies, but we got a lot about Jenna in general. And the first thing that we got is that, you know, this is Jenna's first girls trip. So that was very interesting. I'm wondering, well, not even wondering, we know as I get more into this review. But it's some foreshadowing there into like the dynamics of what's going to happen with the group and maybe like some of the effects that it's going to have on Jenna. And so I thought that that was interesting. Obviously, at that time, I didn't know that when she first said it, but it did spark that for me. Like, oh, I wonder if this is going to mean anything for the episode. And it did. So kudos to the producers. Back to the car with the ladies on their way to the Hamptons. And they're now having this conversation with Jessel about, you know, she reveals that she and her husband have not had since her kids had been born. She has twin boys. I guess they had just turned 1. So it had been a little over a year or so since she had her husband. And of course the ladies are, you know, shocked. I don't want to say it was cringy, but it was almost kind of like, eh. Like, I can understand them having that opinion, obviously, but I also kind of took the approach of like, okay, whatever, like that's not my business. Cause I can only imagine that that's an uncomfortable conversation to have. And they were really kind of like poking into it more like, well, why? And I'm like, I don't know if that's y'all's business. Like I will wonder it and I'll probably go kiki with my homegirl like behind the scenes about it. But I don't know that I'll be pressing her for the information. I'm not saying they're wrong for doing it, but it's probably not something that I would have done. But she opened up and she told them, it kind of felt like a little apprehensively, but she told them like, I had the C-section and it's like I'm just not really necessarily, I don't know if she said she wasn't comfortable, but that's what I was pulling from it. Like, she's just like, we just haven't. Like, we're busy, we got the boys, blah, blah, blah. So they kiki about that, and this will come up later, but again, it's not a topic that I would necessarily talk about, and it didn't feel like she was comfortable talking about it. But again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's just what I picked up. I'm just being a viewer. Finally, all the ladies get to the house and, they start having this conversation again about how there's only caviar. And basically, Uba is starving and Sai is starving as well. So Uba goes, she's like, I gotta go get me some food. Like, I have to. And Erin, still being a good sport, she's making note of it, but she's just like, I'm not understanding, like, of course I wasn't going to provide lunch. She's like, it's around 4 o'clock and we're going to dinner at 7. And that's where she lost me. She didn't say it in a mean way or anything. Like I said, she was handling it well. But I'm just like, oh, babe, like that's for me, even for me, like that's a long gap. Like, yeah. And it's like they just got off of presumably like a 2 to 3 hour ride. So it's just like, yeah, like I would assume that they would be hungry as well. Like, and I've never even had caviar, but it didn't look like a sufficient snack to me. So it's just like, yeah, like feed the girls at 4 and we can still go to dinner at 7. And whatever we don't eat at 7, we can bring it home. That's fine. Because 7 is even early for dinner. I'm going to be hungry after that as well. So I understood where they were coming from on that one. But that was fun as well. We then get more information about Jenna because she's sitting there and the girls are talking while Uba goes and gets her food. And they get on the topic of, like, I guess they were kind of talking about Jessel's mom. Well, I don't remember how they got. Sai, one of them had asked Jenna about the passing of her mom. She had recently passed, and they were asking, were you close with your mom? And she was expressing that her mom had Asperger's, which affected like her emotional connection and like just like how compassionate she was, I guess. So Jenna was expressing that, she didn't really have a close relationship with her mom. And Erin, who I guess is like a little bit closer, she said it, she's a little bit closer to Jenna than other ladies. She's like, well, that adds some context because Jenna can come off a little cold sometimes. Not that she's a cold person, but she comes off that way sometimes. So it's interesting to hear that when she grew up, she didn't really have that type of affection in her life, so she doesn't really put it out. And I like stuff like that as well because, again, it gives us more about Jenna's character and who she is. And I just think that that's great storytelling. And I'm saying kudos to like the producers and stuff like that, but it's not really a them thing because that's just a natural conversation they were having. But still, like, I think it's great for the show and I'm enjoying it and I'm enjoying learning about Jenna in this authentic way. I think that's going to be helpful for us down the line, right? Because I think that we can tell that Jenna's a little bit more reserved than the other ladies, and it might rub people, some viewers, the wrong way. But I think and I hope having that context helps, kind of soften the blow, so to speak, if you feel like you're not getting that ooh ah sensation from Jenna. We also learned, I don't know if this was like pre-planned or anything, but we also learned that Jenna brought lingerie for the rest of the ladies, and they didn't talk too much about it but from what I gathered, it seems like she had someone look into the ladies, maybe by Instagram or maybe just by knowing them personally. And they picked out lingerie for each of the ladies, and she brought it. And even as I'm looking at it, it wasn't. It sounds kind of. It doesn't sound casual. I don't. It's more formal than you would think, right? Like as I was watching her do it, it was wrapped, and it seemed like it had like a note on it. Maybe not even a note, but maybe at least just like the ladies' names on them, like they were addressed to the each lady specifically. And so it was a gift. At the end of the day, it was a gesture from Jenna, right? Like it was a serious thing, and we already immediately get basically Jessel saying in her confessional that she doesn't like it, but that doesn't really come to a head until later. So we'll get back to that. They were doing confessionals leading up into this dinner that they're going to, this 7 o'clock dinner, and I was like, I love that Jenna's confessional is in her closet. Like we saw when she had the event, the first episode, how her closet leads straight into her room. So there's kind of that mixture right there, and her seat for her confessional, if you haven't noticed, it's kind of right there in that nook of the door where you can kind of see like this much of a space of her room, but it's really like her closet is the view. And I was like, that's sickening because she had a beautiful closet. So I don't know if they've done that for some ladies on Housewives before, but I liked it. So they finally get to dinner, and Uba finally gets to eat, and they're having a good conversation. They're having fun. Jessel ordered a espresso martini with tequila, which I love. So I was like, ooh, I kind of like me a little Jessel. She knows a good drink. And basically, the ladies get back into Erin's talking about how in the morning they're going to they're going to work out, and she was going to cook them breakfast. And the ladies start like, oh, I don't want to eat before breakfast. Like, it's going to make me sick. And she's like, okay, well, we won't eat. Like, we'll just have coffee. And then Jenna's like, oh, well, is it going to be, what did she say? Dreamy coffee? Like, dreamy coffee? I guess it's like a brand of coffee or maybe like from a specific place. She's like, no, I don't have that, but I'll get that for you. And then Jess was like, well, I want that coffee too. Like, I don't want regular coffee. And then it was like, well, I have my own ginger tea, so I'll drink that. And so I was like, oh, I'll have ginger tea too. So it's just adding to the storyline of the ladies being a little difficult. And you can tell that contrast between like Erin had plans and now they're being switched around to treat the ladies. And again, I'm going to keep saying Erin handled it well. So I'm liking seeing that. It's showing that Erin can be very easygoing, even though you can tell that her personality is like kind of type A. So I'm liking seeing that because even in those different interactions, you get to learn about Erin as well. Even though nobody's like strictly saying it, you can see it. So it's fun to watch. We then get even more about Jenna because they start talking about just kind of like relations, and she had kind of, they asked her something and she's like, well, it's they were talking about having sex multiple times in a night, and she's like, well, it's different with women, but it's, she didn't really want to share, but they're like, no, tell us about you, like, and then Jessel ultimately asked her like, well, how did you realize that you were more into women than you were into men? And she starts talking about how, she didn't really realize it until she was 40, and she didn't really understand what being a gay woman was. She didn't really have the representation. She hadn't really seen it. And, you know, so I thought that that was an interesting thing to hear. And it tells us even more about Jenna and why she may be reserved the way that she is and not really, you know, connecting with the group as of right now, like sharing with them as much. I looked up her age, she's 55 now, I believe. So it's not that long ago, right? So this is kind of like a new era in her life. And she's probably still trying to figure herself out, just like anybody else, you know, even outside of that situation. So again, I think it adds more color to Jenna, and I think that that's fun to see. We learned some more about Jessel, who, you know, basically they're talking more about her having not had sex with her husband in almost 2 years. And she gives more detail now, and she says basically, you know, she connects some dots, right? Which was fun to watch. She says, you know, she was married to her husband for 7 years before they had kids. And it's basically because they had been trying, but she couldn't conceive. So she had to do IVF and or IVF. And so, you know, she ended up having to do that, and that's how she conceived her kids. But she reveals that she never told her family about it, you know, because she didn't want to be judged at the end of the day. So it was fun learning that about Jessel as well. That's what I mean. Like, we're learning so much about the ladies in so little time. We're only on episode 2. So I'm appreciating that, and I'm appreciating the story that we're getting from them, the natural story. They're just having conversation, and they're all being very open. So that's fun. But I guess that's what you get in a first season of a group of ladies before they get a little tainted and start holding things back. But speaking of holding things back, there was a moment where they were asking Jenna about her significant other. I don't know if she said it was her girlfriend or not. I don't know if there was a title, her partner. And she, you know, she said that she wasn't going to reveal who that was. I didn't know that that was acceptable in Housewives world. It always feels like these housewife franchises are so overproduced, and even if you don't have a partner, they're gonna make you have a partner, and it's gonna be forced, and it's gonna be this thing. But she's just outright like, oh, I have a partner, but I'm not telling y'all who it is. And it seems like, at least from episode 2, it's acceptable. Like, Sai does a confessional, she's like, well, I want to know who she is. So I'm wondering if that's some foreshadowing to some conflict that's going to come down the line, or maybe if it's going to come back up. I would assume maybe so in some capacity. But as of right now, it seems like it was acceptable, which was weird to me. So I'm interested to see what happens with that. And the final thing that happens that was, again, a testament to Aaron. They all go to the bathroom, and while Uba's down there, first of all, she barges into the kitchen, which, like Sai said, was entertaining but embarrassing at the same time. And she also went into like the pantry and she stole like some. Well, I'm using the word. That's such a strong word, but that's what happened. She stole coconut milk, and she's like, "I'm taking this," and she's like justifying it. She's like, "This is an expensive restaurant. Like, I'm taking this coconut milk," and you can just tell Aaron was so mortified by it, to the point where, like, even when they got back up to the table, like, they were downstairs. They took an elevator and everything. Like, they got back up to the table. They were still talking about it. And Aaron's like, "Can you put that back? Like, you can't take that." And, you know, ultimately, and they end up returning it. I don't know if that's conversation is going to come up, and I didn't see people talking about it too much. But I was a little cringed by it. Like, I don't think that Uba meant anything bad by it. I don't think that she's a bad person. But she was stealing coconut milk from that restaurant. Like, I don't care how much the water and the bread costs. Like, you can't just be taking stuff from people's restaurants, girl. So that was interesting to watch. And again, Erin, who seems to be somebody that's kind of a control freak and type A again, she handled it well, but she was like, girl, like, that's making me anxious. Like, you can't do that. So it's nice to see that Erin has, like, it always seems like she wants to say a little bit more, but it seems like she has a little bit of restraint, right? And she's able to just kind of bring herself back and express things calmly and get over it. So that was great. Our final thing is they get back to the house. This is where we get some tea, and I'm wondering if this is gonna. I'm waiting to see where the dynamics go with the ladies, basically, right? Like, we just got into it. We're in episode 2. Everybody seems cool and dandy right now, but where are the like real dynamics gonna come in, right? Where the shift's gonna come in. So we mentioned the lingerie that Jenna gifted to all the ladies, and they go home and they try it on. I guess they're gonna have like a ladies' night. Again, that wasn't made clear, but they're all trying on their lingerie. Uba's the first one to say like she doesn't like hers, which kind of was weird because I'm like, she looks great in that, honestly. But again, like, it's her body, so she's gonna have her own perception. But she was very clear that she did not like it, and we got to see that Jenna heard her saying it. But it seems like there was a turn. There were like two turns where like Uber was like, "Okay, I'm just joking. Like, tell Jenna it's fine. I like it." But then she was like, "But I'm changing." So she took it off. So I don't really know what Jenna's opinion about how that happened went. But then we get Jessel, who's even more vocal about the fact that she hates her lingerie piece. And I will say, when I saw it on her, it didn't look flattering. So I can understand her saying she didn't like it, but she's literally like cursing it up a storm and saying it's so ugly and all this, that, and the third. And it looks like a Christmas tree. And she's literally right in front of Jenna's face. And Jenna even does a confession like she's being rude, and I can't even understand how she's like sitting here being this rude and she's not clocking it. And Aaron says the same thing. She's like, "Girl, like, it's weird that you're not noticing that this is offensive." So I'm wondering if that's like a peek into another side of Jessel, or I'm wondering if that was just something, that Jessel kind of messed up on. Like, I don't know. Like, are we seeing a character flaw here, or is she just kind of was in a bad mood? Like, what's happening here? So I'm excited to see that. It's clear that Jenna didn't say anything, and that's what I was mentioning earlier about her being, like she said, it's her first girls trip. She seems a little bit like, um, separated from the group almost, and she didn't say anything about it. So I'm interested to see if she said something in the confessional, but she didn't say anything to Jessel about it. So I'm interested to see if she addresses Jessel and says that she's not okay with it, or like I'm interested to see what happens next episode. And from the preview, it looks like we're gonna talk about it. So we'll see what happens. And next episode, like I told you guys, Bryn is back for you guys that were petitioning for that. So yeah, we will see her, and I will see you guys next episode.